Welcome back to Narrations. Tonight's story is set in the winter of 1970, a season of snow, silence, and second chances. It's a story about unlikely friendships, old wounds, and the strange ways that loneliness can pull people together when everything else falls apart. This is the Holdovers, 2023, a warm, funny, and deeply human tale about three people stuck together over a cold New England Christmas break, and the unexpected family they become. It begins at Barton Academy, an elite New England boarding school tucked away in the woods, where students walk in blazers and snow coats, and traditions run deeper than the roots of the old trees. Christmas break is approaching. Students pack their trunks, parents arrive in shiny cars, and the campus buzzes with excitement. But not everyone gets to go home. Paul Hunham, a history teacher, knows student likes but every student respects, has been assigned to chaperone the boys who must stay behind for the holidays. The Holdovers. The ones with nowhere else to go. Paul is brilliant but blunt, strict to the core, and famously humorless. His students call him the Warden, and honestly, he lives up to it. Paul's life is small, his apartment filled with books, his days shaped by old habits, his heart protected by walls he pretends he doesn't have. He expects nothing from anyone, and in return, expects everyone to expect nothing from him. Among the students forced to stay behind is Angus Tully, a bright but troubled teen with a sharp tongue and a fragile heart. Angus is not supposed to be here. His mother promised a vacation with her new husband, but those plans vanish overnight, leaving Angus angry and hurt. He hides his pain with sarcasm, but inside, he feels abandoned. The third figure in this small winter world is Mary Lamb, the school's head cook, warm, weary, and grieving. Her son, a Barton graduate, recently died in Vietnam. She moves through the empty dining hall like a woman holding her breath, trying to stay busy so she doesn't fall apart. And just like that, the three of them, a bitter teacher, a heartbroken teen, and a grieving mother, are left behind together in a nearly deserted boarding school as snow begins to fall. At first, it's awkward. Paul wakes the boys at dawn, forces them into strict schedules, assigns extra homework, and insists on daily physical exercise. He writes angry notes in red ink, lectures them on ancient civilizations, and quotes philosophers like weapons. Angus, unsurprisingly, hates every minute of it. Mary, cooking in the quiet kitchen, watches the two with patient amusement, and sometimes pity. She sees through both their defenses. She knows that Paul's sternness hides loneliness, and that Angus's anger hides fear. But she doesn't push either of them. She simply keeps the warmth alive, with food, with humor, with kindness. When most of the boys are suddenly whisked away by a wealthy parent who decides to take them skiing, only Angus remains. Just him and Paul. And Mary. The three of them become a strange triangle of personalities, clashing, arguing, ignoring each other, yet all slowly bending toward one another because, deep down, they each need what the others carry. The school grows colder and quieter. Snow piles against the windows. The halls echo with emptiness. Paul tries to keep everything strictly academic, wake-up calls, meal schedules, structured study hours, but Angus is restless, clever, and impossible to contain. He sneaks around campus, tests boundaries, and pokes fun at Paul's rigid ways. One night, when Paul catches Angus watching TV past curfew, the argument that follows is sharp and painful. Angus accuses Paul of never understanding anyone, of hiding behind rules because he's afraid of real connection. Paul fires back, calling Angus spoiled and careless. Mary hears them from her room and sighs, knowing neither of them is really angry at the other. They're angry at their own lives. The next morning brings a small thaw. Mary serves breakfast, pancakes, warm and soft, and sits with them. She opens up about her son, about how silent the holidays feel without him, how she works because stillness hurts. Angus looks at her with soft eyes. Paul shifts uncomfortably, knowing grief in his own way but never speaking of it. Later, Mary decides they all need air, a break from the walls and the ache inside them. She invites them to help her deliver gifts to local families in need, something she's been doing for years. Paul resists at first, naturally, but eventually agrees. What begins as a simple outing becomes the first meaningful moment they share. Mary offers kindness with ease. Angus, surprisingly gentle, helps children try on coats. Paul stands awkwardly at first, unsure what to do, but slowly, something shifts in him as he watches Mary's quiet generosity. When they return to Barton Academy, there is a softness in the air that wasn't there before. Dinner feels warmer. The silence feels comfortable. Even Paul cracks a joke, badly, and Mary laughs, shaking her head. But the peace doesn't last long. One day, Angus finds out that his mother and new stepfather have gone on vacation without him after all, to St. Kitts. They never intended to pick him up. He wasn't forgotten. He was excluded. The hurt is unbearable. Angus lashes out, breaking rules, running off campus, drinking, disappearing into the cold night. Paul is furious, but underneath the anger is fear. He storms out into the snow to find him. He discovers Angus drunk and shivering near the woods, the boy's eyes full of pain and shame. Paul, breathless and shaken, helps him back, not yelling, not lecturing. Just helping. It's the first time Angus sees Paul as something other than an enemy. The next day, Mary gently nudges them to take a trip, anywhere but this empty school. Paul grumbles, resistant. Angus waits, hopeful. Eventually, Paul relents. And so begins an unexpected winter road trip, cramped, funny, chaotic, through New England. They visit shops, diners, bookstores, and an old family friend of Paul's. Layers peel back. Secrets surface. Softness emerges. Angus discovers Paul's past, his failures, his bitterness, the disappointments he never admitted. Paul realizes that Angus is not just troubled, he's lonely, aching for someone to choose him. The bond grows. The world outside freezes. Inside the small trio, warmth blooms. But as the holidays approach, everything reaches a turning point, and something in their fragile little world is about to break open for real. Because the heart of the Holdovers isn't just loneliness. It's the moment three people realize they can save each other, even when they couldn't save the ones they lost. The winter deepens, the world grows quieter, and the bond between Paul, Angus, and Mary starts to feel almost like a real family, mismatched, imperfect, but warm in a way none of them expected. But life has a way of testing the very connections we rely on most. Their road trip continues into small towns and snowy horizons. For the first time, Angus sees Paul not as a strict teacher, but as a man, flawed, stubborn, lonely, and shaped by disappointments he never healed. Paul, in turn, sees Angus as a boy carrying too much heartbreak for his age, craving not rebellion but belonging. One night, they stay at Paul's old friend Lydia's home, a kind woman who welcomes them with warmth and curiosity. Over dinner, Lydia teases Paul gently, revealing pieces of his past he never talks about. His failed job prospects. His broken engagement. His long pattern of pushing people away with rules because intimacy terrifies him. Angus watches him carefully, seeing for the first time the cracks behind the man's stern exterior. Later, when the house is quiet, Paul sits with Lydia and admits something raw. "I was never good at life. Just school. And even that only sometimes." Lydia smiles sadly. "You're harder on yourself than anyone else could ever be." The next morning, as snow falls quietly, Angus confides in Lydia too, about his father, who abandoned him, and his mother, who always seems to choose someone else. Lydia listens, then tells him something no one has ever said. "You're not the problem, sweetheart. You were never the problem." The drive back to Barton is softer. Angus talks. Paul listens. Mary hums along to the radio, her grief easing for a moment. For the first time, the car feels like a home, warm breath on cold windows, laughter hidden between sentences, and the quiet comfort of knowing someone is finally on your side. But peace doesn't last long. When they return to Barton Academy, Angus receives news from home. His mother and stepfather want him transferred to a military school. They think he needs discipline. They think he needs structure. But at its core, it means one thing: they don't want him back. The moment Angus reads the letter, something breaks inside him. His breathing quickens. His eyes glaze. He whispers, "They're sending me away? Without even talking to me?" Paul tries to comfort him, but Angus panics, runs out into the freezing night, and disappears. Paul goes after him, shouting into the wind, stumbling through snowdrifts, following prints that fade under the falling ice. When he finally finds Angus on the frozen lake, trembling and furious, the boy screams, "Why does everyone leave me? Why doesn't anyone want me?" Paul, breathless and shaken, steps closer. "I'm here. I'm right here. I didn't leave." Angus collapses into tears. Paul catches him, holds him, steadies him. For Paul, it's the moment everything becomes clear, the moment he realizes this boy isn't just a responsibility. He's someone who needs him. Someone he cares for. Someone he'd fight for. The next morning, Paul storms into Barton Academy's head office. He pleads Angus's case, fiercely, passionately, arguing that sending him away will destroy him. But the headmaster is unmoved. Rules are rules. Contracts are contracts. Parents decide. When Paul realizes nothing will change, a fire lights inside him. For once in his life, he chooses compassion over protocol. He chooses heart over rules. He chooses Angus. In a moment that shocks everyone, including himself, Paul quits on the spot. No job. No security. No plan. Just one truth: Angus Tully deserves to be protected. Mary is stunned when she hears the news. She knows what it means, that Paul has just sacrificed the only stability in his life for a boy who isn't even his family. But she also knows this is who Paul truly is, beneath the walls and the grumpiness and the fear. That evening, Paul packs his classroom slowly, touching the books and artifacts as if saying goodbye to an old version of himself. Angus finds him there, sitting behind his desk. He asks quietly, "Did they fire you because of me?" Paul shakes his head. "No. I walked away because of you. Because someone had to stand up for you." Angus absorbs this in silence. No one has ever chosen him before, not like this. Not at this cost. Mary brings them dinner, warm stew and soft bread, and they sit together in the dim light, three people connected not by duty, but by choice. The day Paul leaves campus for good, he and Angus stand in the snow outside the dorm. Paul puts a hand on his shoulder, awkward, firm, sincere. "You're going to be okay," he says. "You're smarter than you know. And stronger than you think." Angus's eyes fill. "I'll miss you, sir." Paul smiles, small, real, the kind of smile he rarely ever lets out. "I'll miss you too, Tully." Angus watches as Paul walks down the snowy path, suitcase in hand, disappearing slowly into the winter mist. Some goodbyes are quiet. Some are necessary. Some are carved into your heart. And then comes the final narration, gentle, reflective, full of the strange hope that only comes when the coldest season begins to melt. Angus writes Paul a letter. In it he says thank you. Thank you for caring. Thank you for staying. Thank you for being the one adult in his life who didn't run away. Paul, alone in his small apartment, reads the letter with a tremor in his voice. He places it carefully in a drawer, like something sacred. And Mary? She leaves Barton too. She finds a new beginning, one where grief doesn't own every part of her. She keeps in touch with both of them, because sometimes, the family you build during the hardest winter becomes the one that lasts long after the snow is gone. In the final moments, the camera lingers on falling snow, soft and slow, settling over the campus like a blessing. Not cold anymore, but warm, like forgiveness, like healing, like the quiet promise of a better tomorrow. Because the Holdovers isn't a story about being stuck. It's a story about being found. About finding each other in the quietest places. And discovering that sometimes, the most unexpected people become your home. If you enjoyed this narration, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Narrations, where stories are told with heart, warmth, and humanity.